of the cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
Great to be back with you on The Simple Truth. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. Today is Testimony Tuesday, where we bring you real, live, firsthand testimonial accounts of the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. Our guest today is Theresa Bonopartis. She's the author of A Journey to Healing Through Divine Mercy, also director of Lumina, Hope and Healing After Abortion, and co-developer of Entering Canaan, a Sacramental Journey to an Inheritance of Mercy, a post-abortion ministry that she developed with the Sisters of Life. You can find more about these resources and others when it comes to healing after abortion by going to lovewillendabortion.com and click on the healing tab there, and you'll find links to all of it. You can also go directly to the Entering Canaan website by going to divinemercy4me.wordpress.com. That's divinemercy4me.wordpress.com. Teresa, it's always a great blessing to be with you, and especially to have you with us today to share some of your testimony and your ministry of healing. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Jim. Although I have to tell you, we did a new website, so that the website address has changed. It's just enteringcanaan.com now.
Enteringcanaan.com. Perfect. All right, enteringcanaan.com. Excellent.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get rolling here, and we always begin at the beginning. Share a little on your childhood. What was your early life like? Your family, the culture that you grew up in.
Okay, so I grew up in an Italian Catholic family. We went to church every Sunday, but you know, it's funny when I think about it. I didn't really know my faith. I didn't really ever remember it really being applied, except for the fact that you got up on Sunday and you went to Mass. But, you know, we did have traditions or whatever. And really, that's all I remember about my faith growing up. I was really the last child in my family. I was what, unfortunately, I was told was a mistake. I was born way after my other sisters. So I think I always had like a sense of loneliness or not belonging, or maybe when somebody tells you that, right? And so I think I was always searching for something, only I didn't know what I was searching for, always looking to belong. You know, I guess that's the way that I would say it. And that's pretty much the way that I lived my life. I just always remember feeling isolated and alone. And so when I got into junior high and high school, I just started looking for a way, you know, to be accepted. And, you know, really, I grew up in the 1960s when I was in high school, the Woodstock generation. I actually even went to Woodstock, and, you know, that was a sexual revolution. I mean, when I think of Humane Vitae, I always say I'm a perfect example of everything that he was talking about in there. Like, I am a collateral damage, you know, from that whole era that we lived in. And everybody was sexually active, and I wasn't. And I always remember feeling like there was something wrong with me because I wasn't. It's just funny. They talk about peer pressure. It's very real. And so I started seeing someone, and I ended up sleeping with him, and I became pregnant. And I could still remember when I found out that I was pregnant. I could actually even remember the chair that I was sitting on when I called from my parents' house and calling the doctor and finding out that I got a positive test result back, and having a whole range of feelings going through me, from being excited to having a baby to, you know, being very fearful to tell my parents. My dad was pretty strict. He wasn't around that often because he owned a restaurant, but it was always one of those wait until your father comes home kind of things. So there was like an instilled fear in us, like, that he would, you know, he was very strict and that something was going to happen. And so, you know, obviously I was very much afraid. I told the father of the baby, And he actually told me that he would marry me. And so because I was just dreading telling my family, I kept postponing it and postponing it and postponing it. And I didn't end up telling them until I was into my 4th month of pregnancy. And, during that time, like any other girl that gets pregnant, you go through a whole bunch of scenarios of, what could be the outcome, what could happen, what are they going to say, what are they going to do. And so I played all those things out in my head. But the one thing that I didn't play out is the one thing that did happen where, my dad got up out of his chair and he told me to leave the house and to forget that I was his daughter, and that he was going to forget that I was his daughter. And, my mother, at that time, she didn't really say anything. She kind of just followed me around the house as I was getting ready to leave. And I just remember walking out of the house and being so totally shocked that this was going on. And my sister was coming over at the same time with her kids. And I remember walking down the walk of my parents' house and just wondering if I was ever going to see any of them again. And I didn't really, and I just I guess maybe I want to say something about coerced abortions here, because we use that word, and, it would have definitely applied to something that I went through, which I'll talk about a little later. But I think that it's hidden in so many different ways. Like, I've had so many women come to the ministry that didn't think they was coerced, but then later on found out that really they were. It could have been much more subtle, but, no woman happily walks into a clinic, although that might be a little different now just because so many hearts are so hardened now. But I think it's important to say that most women feel some kind of pressure to have an abortion. And so I left the house that day, and I had no place to go. And a friend of mine, her mother, told me that I could stay with them for a little while, but it wasn't a permanent solution to the situation. So I went over there, and I just remember feeling totally isolated and alone. They would get up every morning, go to school, go to work, and I would be left in the house by myself. I started fighting with the father of the baby just because of the circumstances. I was so stressed out. I was 17 years old, no job, no money, no place to go. I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I did know that I didn't want to have an abortion. And my dad had one of my sisters start calling me every day and telling me that he wanted me to have an abortion, that he would pay for the abortion. And every day I would say to her, I'm not doing that. I'm not having an abortion. And I kept fighting with the father until finally I just told him to leave me alone. And he was a kid himself, and so, he did. He left me alone. So I was in this situation. Dave Reardon from the Elliott Institute, he does post-abortion research, and he says this all the time, that a lot of women are aborted before they ever step foot into a clinic. And I think that's the way that I felt, that I was totally cut off from everybody and everything, no place to go, nothing to do, didn't know what I could do. And I kept getting those phone calls every day. And until finally I gave in and said I would have the abortion, not because I wanted an abortion or because it was a free choice, but because I felt like I had no choice, that this was the only option open to me. And so I agreed that I would have the abortion. And to this day, Jim, I still can't remember how I got to the hospital. My abortion was in a hospital because like I said, I was late into my 4th month of pregnancy. And I don't remember how I got there. I just remember being there, and they had me in a room in the maternity ward. And nobody told me anything. Nobody told me the development of my baby. Nobody told me anything about what was going to happen to me for the abortion. I was a kid in a hospital room by myself with no clue of anything that was going on. And I just remember the abortionist coming into the room, and he looked like Danny Kaye, that old comedian. And for years after that, every time he came on the TV, I had to turn it off because I couldn't stand to look at the guy, And he came in, and he just proceeded to inject me with a saline solution. Again, not telling me anything about the development of my baby, not telling me anything about what was going to happen to me. He just came in, injected me, and walked out of the room. And, like you say, my whole life obviously changed after a period of time. Saline abortions, I know you probably know what they are. They inject the saline into your abdomen, and what it really does is it burns the baby to death, and it makes you go into labor. And that's exactly what happened. Is I went into labor, and I was in labor for hours, and still not really understanding what was going on. I didn't know anything. I was a kid. I didn't even really understand what was happening. And my sister kept calling me and asking me what was going on, and I kept saying to her, I don't know, because I really didn't know what was happening, except for that I was in pain. And after many hours, I ended up giving birth to a dead baby boy. And, to this day, it's awful. Like, to this day, I could just picture the whole thing in my head. I could picture him laying on the bed next to me, and just a whole range of feelings going through me, like wanting to pick him up and putting him inside of me, which I knew I couldn't do. I'm just seeing his little fingers, his little toes, and just thinking to myself, here I was in this hospital, and actually I was on the maternity ward, and I was just thinking, how is it possible that this is permitted? How could this be? Like, there was this part of me that just couldn't even believe, and still can't believe, but we do it all the time, right? That this is something that is legal and permissible in our society. It was just, my whole life changed after that, to say it. There wasn't, I hated myself from that moment on. I just totally hated myself.
We are on holy ground here with Teresa Bonapartis, sharing some of her story with us, and we're hearing the portion here in this first segment of really a case of the fallout of the so-called sexual revolution, as she talked about, the counterfeit that was held out for so many, for an entire culture and an entire generation, trickling down even to our day. When we get back, we're going to hear how Jesus stepped into that, the sacramental life. We're going to hear a testimony of healing, and we're going to hear more of Teresa's story when we get back. Stay tuned to The Simple Truth. We'll be right back.
Are you holding on to an old car or truck because you think dealers won't want it? Then consider donating it to the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network. This is a great way to turn your unvalued vehicle into a powerful gift for Catholic radio. You'll be taking part in our evangelization efforts to continue spreading Christ's love throughout the world. Our Lord uses Catholic radio to draw more people to Himself, and one of the best ways to support the Station of the Cross is by contributing to our vehicle donation program. The process is safe and simple. Your generosity will greatly benefit our mission to bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners. To find out more or to donate your vehicle today, visit thestationofthecross.com or call 1-866-628-CARS. That's thestationofthecross.com or 1-866-628-2277.
There's no better way to start your day than with spiritual formation from inspiring priests.
In regard to the spiritual life, one could put it this way. There is no resurrection without the cross. There is no Easter Sunday without a preceding Good Friday. There is no Mount Tabor without Mount Calvary, and there is no glorious transfiguration without a passion and a death.
That's Sermons for Everyday Living, weekdays from 6 to 7 a.m. Eastern on the Station of the Cross.
This is Rick Paolini
and Father Jacek Mazer.
Join us every Sunday morning at 11 for Divine Mercy in My Soul.
We are in a time of mercy.
Absolutely.
But we must take advantage of it.
I was just about to say, we need to take a good advantage of it, make good use out of it in order to be treated with mercy at the end.
So tune in for Divine Mercy in My Soul every Sunday morning at 11.
And catch the encore presentation every Tuesday evening at 8.
Jezu ufam Tobie.
Jesus, I trust in you.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. It is Testimony Tuesday with our guest today, Teresa Bonopartis. She's the author of A Journey to Healing Through Divine Mercy and so much more. We'll get to some of her ministry as we get on to the later portions of the program today. But Teresa, where you left off, it sounds like so young adult years here, after the experience of abortion, experiencing this feeling of being trapped and coerced into it, and now you're left bewildered, broken. What happened from there?
Yeah, well, I definitely hated myself, and I just started living a destructive lifestyle. You know, it's funny because I can remember the day of the abortion, coming back to that house where my friends were, and them all partying, and here I just came out of this traumatic experience, and I just remember drinking and drinking and drinking because I wanted it to go away, but of course it wasn't going to go away. And just the destructive life that started after that, being promiscuous, getting high, doing all of those kinds of things. And what ended up happening is I ended up meeting someone and getting married to someone who was a drug and alcohol abuser. And obviously my life was not good. But, you know, I think that I didn't feel worthy of love or that anyone could love me, and I hated myself. And so I took anything that I could get, or I thought, you know, just the whole process of the way you think when you're feeling so filled with hate. And so many women go through this after an abortion experience. And I got married, and I ended up, you know, getting pregnant. And I could just remember the whole time that when I got pregnant, feeling like this is it, God was going to get back at me. And after, you know, my family, like even after I had the abortion, nobody was speaking to me. It was a few years before we even spoke again, even though I had given in and had the abortion. And it was just like, even though you're back into the family or whatever, nobody speaks about it. And that's another thing that's so common. It's just like, you know, everybody wants you to get an abortion or you have an abortion. But then after you have the abortion, no one wants to talk about it. Nobody knows what to say. Everybody pretends it doesn't happen. And I know that I always felt like there was a monster in the room, and everybody knew the monster was there, but nobody talked about it, you know. So it was hovering around all the time, but it wasn't something that you spoke about. And, you know, so I got into this unhealthy relationship, and when I got pregnant the first time, I always felt like God was going to punish me now for what I had done. So I really didn't enjoy my pregnancy at all. But then I had my son, and thanks be to God, he was healthy. My husband straightened out for a couple of years, and I ended up getting pregnant a second time. And by the time I was going to have my second son, his addictions were full-fledged again. So I was always like struggling, you know, obviously because of the addictions, but also because of my abortion. And we actually went to counseling, and I would tell the therapist, you know, that I had this abortion and that it was bothering me, but I always was told to forget about it, that it was in my past, that, you know, that wasn't what was bothering me. What was bothering me was because my husband was an alcoholic and that he used drugs. And so it was always something besides the abortion, which also still happens to many women. Although it's better, there's more people acknowledging it, you know, there's still such a huge denial of the impact of abortion on our society, even today. And the relationship was really bad. And then finally, at one point, it just got so bad, I ended up walking out of the marriage. And I always say that if I didn't have children, I probably wouldn't have walked out. I probably would have stayed there and allowed myself to be abused and live in this craziness. But because I didn't want that for my children, one day I just ended up picking up my children. They were very young, one in one arm, one in the other, and walking out of the house with a couple of diapers and knocking at my sister's door. And up until that point, I had really kept the addiction really in secret because I didn't want them to know. You know, I had messed up so bad with the abortion and everything. So I really hid the craziness of the addictions away from them. So I ended up staying with my sister for a while, and I really tried to start to build my life back up. After a few period of time, I ended up going back to school, became a drug and alcohol abuse counselor, and I was really looking to, you know, make my life right and to give my kids a life. But I still suffered from depression, from anxiety, suicidal ideation, all the things that came with my abortion. I would close myself up in my room, be depressed. Just so many ways it was manifesting itself, and constantly looking for help and not being able to find any. And what ended up happening with me is my older son was going to be making his first communion, and so there was a penance meeting for the parents. And at that time, I had totally stopped going to church, obviously. I felt like there was a neon sign on my back, that I was unforgivable, that if I walked into the church, the walls of the church were going to fall down around me, and all of those things. But I did want them to receive their sacraments, so I did send him to religious instructions, but I would leave him up at the corner, go in and I'll pick you up here when it's over. And we got this message that they wanted to have a meeting, a first penance meeting for the parents. And I went again because I wanted him to receive his sacraments. And I remember going into the bottom of, it is in the gym in the school, and all the chairs in a circle and sitting there and just being totally terrified to be in there because of what I had done. And the priest came out and he started speaking, and he started talking about God's mercy and God's forgiveness and how God forgives any sin if we're sorry. And then he actually started listing sins, like God will forgive adultery, God will forgive drug abuse, God will forgive this and that and the other thing. And all of a sudden he said, and God will forgive abortion. And I couldn't believe it when I heard it. I was like, is it possible that this priest is really telling me that there could be some forgiveness for this? By this time, it had been so many years, and I had never been able to find any help or never had any hope. And, so it was just like something like when I heard it, just to grab onto and cling to. And I left and went home that night for the first time, maybe thinking that there was some kind of hope for me. And I was really petrified, and I ended up calling this priest and asking him if I could come in and speak to him. And I could still remember going to the rectory, pulling up in front of the rectory, feeling like my feet were glued to the floor of my car because I was so terrified to go in and speak to him. But I had tried so many things and nothing had happened. By this time, I had actually burnt out of my job because in addictions, there's a lot of abortion because of the promiscuity. And I couldn't handle the clients that were coming to me that were post-abortive because I hadn't even been able to find help for my own abortion. And so I went to the priest that day, and I went in, and we started speaking. And I hadn't been to confession in years and years at this point. And I went to the Sacrament of Reconciliation, and he just listed the sins for me. And we, of course, talked about the abortion. And for the first time, like I could still get choked up when I think about it today, for the first time, I felt like somebody was really listening to me and really understood, and that there was some hope of healing for me, that there was some hope that my life could be okay again. And he gave me a miraculous medal to put around my neck, which I still wear, the miraculous medal. And I went home that night, and I would say that wasn't the end of my journey. That was really the beginning of my journey to healing. And I just became on this huge quest for this mercy and love that this priest was telling me about, and I started seeing him for spiritual direction. And I started spending a lot of time praying because I wasn't working because I had burnt out of my job. And I would do the Station of the Cross, and I would spend time before the Blessed Sacrament, and I would say to him, Jesus, they say that you forgive, they say that you heal. I'm not going to leave you alone until you heal me. And I would actually do that. I would kneel in prayer, and that's what I would say to him. And as time went by, in the beginning I was really in darkness because of my sins and what I had experienced. But as time went by, I really started feeling his presence in my life. But I still didn't have the tools I needed to heal from the abortion, like the psychological aspect of it. And but as I grew in love with Jesus, you get the strength, right? When you know that love, you get the strength to look a little deeper and to heal a little deeper. And after a period of time, I did find a counselor who knew post-abortion dynamics, and I started working with her too. But it was still a struggle. I was still struggling with depression, still kind of shutting myself off. I used to shut myself off from everybody, because I was just in so much pain. I would get attacked so deeply. And I was still doing that, even though I also was coming to know God's love. So there was a real struggle going on there. But I just kept praying, and I kept going to her, and I kept going for spiritual direction. And one day when it was really bad, I called her up, and she just said to me, you just hang in there because I know that this is happening. I know that it's coming. Just keep hanging in there. And that night, I just, I put my kids to bed because I always felt bad because I thought they had this depressed mother who was struggling all the time and they didn't know why, And I put them to bed because I was really having such a hard time. And I went into the bathroom and I just squatted on the floor in my bathroom because I was in so much pain. And I just squatted there, and I just kept saying over and over and over again, Jesus, I trust you. Jesus, I trust you. Jesus, I trust in you. And sometime in the middle of the night, after many hours of being there, I mean, I was there on that floor for hours. And it's so inadequate to describe it this way, but I just felt like I crawled on the cross with Christ. And instead of feeling like the pain or whatever, that I felt this warm rush go through me. It was like I was immersed in his love or something. And I just knew. I knew that he had touched me and that I was healed. I just knew it. And I got up and I went to bed. And the next day, I got up and really know there's that part of me that was just waiting for those feelings to come back, and they didn't. And it's just been like such an amazing journey since then. I mean, there's always growth. There's always healing. God brings you deeper and deeper into your wounds, right? Because he wants to heal you. But that feeling of unforgiveness was gone, and I just was really freed from all the oppression that I had there. And I always say, you know, I've been doing this work for 25 years or more, and I always say, you know, like, I have been so blessed to watch so many miracles of his mercy, but the biggest miracle that I know of is me. Like, just knowing what I lived with and what my life was like and what I had gone through and what he's done for me and what he's done in my life since then with, you know, the ministry and everything. It's just like, it's so amazing to see God's mercy and how he works. Just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Jesus is amazing, and praise God. You know, for everybody who's listening, I just want you to just think for a moment. I mean, we all have brokenness, right? We all commit sin, and I know that there are people listening that are in that place that they're holding on to a big sin that they haven't been able to bring to confession. And so just hear the power of bringing that sorrow, bringing that repentance, bringing that sin to Jesus in the confessional and laying it out and allowing him to take that sin and to fill you with his grace and with his mercy, and then understanding that while his forgiveness, then it's there, right? You have been forgiven. Even so, there's still brokenness that does remain. And so there's this process of healing from there. And so maybe when we get back, Teresa can share a little bit more about that, because she knows so much about it, not just because she personally has experienced this amazing grace of healing from Jesus and through the sacramental life and through a life of prayer, but then she is helping other people to walk through this process of healing as well. So we're going to hear more about her story personally. We're going to hear more about her ministry when we get back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
Each weekday from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern, the Station of the Cross brings you Mother Miriam Live.
We love you out here in Massachusetts, and I got a message for all the young mothers I know listen to you. You can do it.
God bless you, Ed. That's God's message.
Tune in from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern for Mother Miriam Live on the Station of the Cross and our free iCatholic Radio mobile app. You can also watch the video stream every day on Facebook or on YouTube.
We offer several ways to view our programming grid, including at our website, thestationofthecross.com, and on our iCatholic Radio app. Just click the menu icon in the top left portion of our app and select the link to our programming grid. That's at thestationofthecross.com and on our free iCatholic Radio app for Android and Apple mobile devices.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. If we read the letters of St. Paul in the order in which they were written, we see Paul more aware of his sins as life goes on. We in the pro-life movement are not self-righteous people who think we're better than others. Rather, we begin with repentance, realizing that we recognize the sins in the world only after we've recognized our own. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
Hi, this is Joe McLean, host of the Catholic Drive Time Morning Show, joining you on the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network each weekday morning at 7 a.m. We'll keep you informed and inspired with insightful guests and breaking news stories of the day. That's the Catholic Drive Time, weekday mornings, 7 a.m. on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic radio app. We'll see you then. Praise be to Jesus.
To the Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Our guest today, Teresa Bonopartis, author of A Journey to Healing Through Divine Mercy, also prolific post-abortion healing work. You can go to enteringcanaan.com to find out more about that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Teresa, we still have plenty of time to get into some more of your personal testimony as well, and I want you to be free to share it however you wish. You share it so beautifully. You have a special grace, I think, and a freedom to be able to share your story, which is amazing. But I will just throw these two seeds in if there's a way to weave them in at any point. Two things jump out to me that I think would be helpful is just hearing a little bit about your personal testimony with respect to Jesus in the Holy Eucharist, and also with Our Lady, our Blessed Mother Mary. I know you have a special devotion to her, and specifically to Our Lady of Czestochowa. Maybe you can share a little bit about that too as you go.
Sure. I was just thinking during the break, it's so amazing to me to think of God's goodness and what he's done in my life, how he takes the worst sin in your life and somehow turns it into something good. Not that the abortion was good, but how he brings good out of even such a terrible thing. And yeah, for me, I am totally devoted to the Eucharist. I go to daily mass. I do holy hours every day. That's my life. That's where you allow him to love you. You love him, and that is really what gives you the grace and the ability to be able to go out there. I don't think I could ever do the work if I didn't do that. If I didn't have the relationship that I had with Jesus, I wouldn't be able to do it. And also, even with the healing, if you don't know his love and his mercy, abortion is too terrifying of a thing to look at. You can't look at the horror of abortion. It's really the pits of hell. It really is. There's no other way to describe it. And how do you go there if you don't first know God's love and his mercy? So I think it's so important for people to know that. But it's also important for people to know that that love and that mercy is there. It's waiting for us. And if we're sorry, he can't. He's overjoyed to give it to us. This is why he came to earth, right? To both sinners. And I think people don't realize that the devil tries to fill you with fear and despair and doesn't want you to go to God. And so you get so caught up in that because it just is kind of confirming what you're feeling about yourself. It's really hard to make that first step. And I would just encourage anybody who's listening for any sin, just go and make that first step, because he doesn't disappoint you. He gives you even more than you can imagine. And so, yeah, I've had a Eucharistic life. I still have a Eucharistic life. I can't even bear the thought of not having a Eucharistic life, because that is my life. It's life through him. Otherwise, we get in the way, right? Our humanness and everything. We need him to be able to live this kind of life. And as far as Our Lady goes, when I went back to church and I was seeing that priest for spiritual direction, we ended up having this little prayer group. And I remember the first time I went to the prayer group, there was adoration in the prayer group. And I remember I felt like I was in some kind of a cult or something, because I had no idea. I just didn't have any understanding at all. But one of the things that group did is, as a group, we read True Devotion to Mary, and we consecrated ourselves to Jesus through Mary. And from that day, which was 33 years ago, believe it or not, for me, from that day, I tried to live that consecration from the day I made it. And it's just been amazing. Like with her, I truly feel like Mary has been my guide through my life, continues to be my guide through my life. I totally believe that entering Canaan is hers, and she showed me that in so many ways. It's just been so crazy, the different ways she's manifested herself to me. And I just know that, entering Canaan, and this is, it just has so much to do with Our Lady, just the whole aspect of her, leading us to her son, and like relinquishing our sin, relinquishing our pain, and giving it to her, and letting her journey with us to the promised land, to Jesus Christ, to her son. And along the way, how she protects us, and she just, is there for us. He gave her to us, right, at the cross. This is your child, this is your mother, and just really seeing that manifested. And I mean, I could get into a couple of the ways with the ministry if you want me to,
sure.
Just to kind of show. Okay, so Our Lady Chesterhold is just really weird. I knew nothing about her. We went to a Rosary Congress in Massachusetts, and we were staying at a house, and across the street from the house there was a church, and we went to Mass there in the morning, and when we walked in, there she was. And I had never seen that image of Our Lady before. And I tried to find out about it. All I knew was that she was Polish. I really couldn't find out too much. And then when I came home, I asked a Polish friend, and that's how I found out, obviously, she was from Poland. And, she's dark, and she has the scars across her face that were said to be done with an arrow and a sword during one of the conflicts when the painting was in Constantinople. But I didn't know any of that. So anyway, all of a sudden, she was everywhere. This image that I had never seen before in my life, and I couldn't go anywhere without it being there. One time, I went to confession, and the priest had just come back from Poland, and as a penance, he gave me a novena to do to Our Lady of Czestochowa. And I was just like, I couldn't even believe that it kept coming up all the time. And then once we started the ministry, I started the ministry of the Sisters of Life. I was before the Blessed Sacrament one day, and I just felt like she was telling me she wanted to be the patroness of the ministry, but I didn't really know why. And I started reading more about her. And those scars that she has on her face, they tried to cover them many, many times. They would hire painters to come and cover the scars, but the scars kept coming back out again. And I just thought to myself, it made so much sense, because it's just like with people that have had an abortion, right? Forget about it. It's in your past. They cover it up, but it's impossible. It keeps coming back out again. And it was just so profound that here all of a sudden she was, and this was the thing I got in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, and then to find that out about the scars, how they tried to cover them up. So she became the patroness of the ministry. But even since then, in so many ways, she has just popped up in my life, and to show her confirmation of being the patroness of the ministry. I truly believe everything comes through her. I really do, without a doubt. I mean, even the retreats that I write, it's just totally through her, and I feel it so strongly. And it was, I don't know if you remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, but they had this, it was called Ocean to Ocean, where a pilgrim image of Our Lady of Czestochowa was going to be traveling around the world. And I heard about it, and so I called to try to find out. It started, I think, in England, and it was going to come to the United States. Father Peter West was going to be the person that traveled with it in the United States. But it just blew my mind. This was many years after. I mean, this was probably less than 10 years ago. And one of the intentions for her traveling the world were for healing from people from abortion. And it was just like such a shock, not a shock because I knew that it came from her, but that here it was, the pilgrim image traveling the world, and this was one of the intentions for people that were suffering from abortion. And then the other instance I'll just mention quickly was there's a shrine to Our Lady of Czestochowa in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And they had asked people that had devotion to her to send a picture of themselves to them, and that they were going to make a mosaic out of people that were devoted to her. And I've been doing that novena every single day since the day I got it in that confessional. It also was very significant in my father's conversion and going to confession before he died, regarding the abortion. Yeah, I mean, she's been in my life in so many ways. It's really amazing. But with the mosaic, when it was finished, they had this thing at the shrine where you could come and you could see the image. And I went, and it's huge. It's a huge, huge image, and it's made up of pictures of everybody's face. But you looked at it and you're like, well, I have no idea where I am. And the bishop during the Mass, told us how we could find out where our picture was in the image. And when I came home, I went online and I looked, and my picture was right in the middle of her scar. And it was just like so appropriate to me that that's where I should be. Where else would I be, right? With the ministry from abortion and all of that. So there's just been so many different ways she's manifested herself and made herself known. We have a beautiful image that we just had done for the Entering Canaan ministry, where someone's relinquishing her aborted child to Mary at the foot of the cross, and then they travel to the promised land. And really, for me, that's what it's all about. It's for me personally, not just, I believe it's for everybody, because it's not like they're saying, oh, there's Teresa, we're going to do this for her. They do it for anyone, obviously, we know that. And so for me, it's just kind of been like relinquishing Joshua, which is my son's name, to Mary at the foot of the cross, and then making the journey to the promised land, to heaven with Jesus, and fighting the different things you have to fight during healing, coming to understand them, growing in your faith, going deeper and deeper into that wound, knowing and trusting more and more. Because, right, once we know Jesus, the deeper that we plug us into our wounds, we know that he's going to be there. We know that his love is waiting for us there, and that he just wants our healing. He totally wants our healing. And going through these battles and stuff with Mary at your side until you come to the shores of heaven, and she hands you your child that's living in the Lord now. And that's what I believe it's all about, and it's just that, I don't know, there's so many people wounded from abortion, and I don't think there's enough out there, and I think that it's so important to get the word out there, especially now with everything that's going on in our world and the way that things are. To me, there's almost like an urgency to get the message out there, to let people know that love and that mercy and that healing is there for them, and that God desires it. And not only does God desire it, but your child desire it, that your aborted children desire for you to be healed, because they're living in the Lord, so they're living in his love. And what do they want? They want you to be whole and healed and to share eternal life with you. And I guess maybe that's a big message to try to get out there. It's a great grace. Like, people will say, oh, you had an abortion, you deserve hell, or you deserve this. Yeah, we do. I mean, honestly, it's such a horrific sin. We do deserve that. Isn't it so beautiful that in spite of the fact that we deserve this, God is so full of love and so full of mercy, that instead of getting that, if you turn to him, he fills you with his grace. And it's just such a beautiful, amazing thing. Our faith is so beautiful. And sometimes, I think, like for people that are suffering from abortion, if you're in the Catholic faith, we are at such an advantage. We have the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. It's not, he's there, he's alive, he's living right now with us in the Eucharist. And it's just such a huge gift and grace for us to be able to receive him and, and let him work in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good, so good. And for those, if you are watching online on video, you'll see Our Lady of Czestochowa, that image behind Teresa there. Oh, yeah. So that's the image if you're not familiar with it. But real quick, I know we're about to hit the hard break, and then I definitely want to give you ample time. Just take the rest of the show in the last segment to share about the ministry, get the word out on it. But real quick, share a little bit about that experience of being called into doing this ministry. Was that a difficult yes to give? What was that like?
You know what? For me, it's so crazy. It's like, it's just always been there. I mean, I think for me, once I had my healing, I was just so I knew there had to be other people out there suffering, and I just really wanted them to know what I received, and that it was there for them, that it wasn't just there for me, that God had it there for everyone. And so I kind of became like on this crazy quest, to really let people know about God's love and his mercy. And Yeah, I mean, that's really pretty much what happened. I mean, I could get a little bit into it after the break. We have a break now, right?
Sure. Yep,
so maybe I'll tell you a little bit about it.
All right, well, praise God. Yeah, it sounds like the grace was there where the yes didn't seem too hard to give. Thanks be to God. But when we get back, we're going to hear about this important ministry, enteringcanaan.com. Go check it out during the break if you're near a computer. We'll be right back on The Simple Truth.
Prayer to Saint Michael. O glorious Prince of the heavenly host, Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in the battle and in the fearful warfare that we are waging against the principalities and powers, against the rulers of this world of darkness, against the evil spirits. Come thou to the assistance of men, whom Almighty God created immortal, making them in his own image and likeness and redeeming them at a great price from the tyranny of Satan. Fight this day the battle of the Lord with thy legions of holy angels, even as of old thou did fight against Lucifer, the leader of the proud spirits, and all his rebel angels, who were powerless to stand against thee. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And that apostate angel transformed into an angel of darkness, who still creeps about the earth to encompass our ruin, was cast headlong into the abyss together with his followers. But behold, that first enemy of mankind, and a murderer from the beginning, has regained his confidence. Changing himself into an angel of light, he goes about with the whole multitude of the wicked spirits to invade the earth and blot out the name of God and his Christ, to plunder, to slay, and to consign to eternal damnation the souls that have been destined for a crown of everlasting life. This wicked serpent, like an unclean torrent, pours into men of depraved minds and corrupt hearts the poison of his malice, the spirit of lying, impiety, and blasphemy, and the deadly breath of impurity, and every form of vice and iniquity. These crafty enemies of mankind have filled to overflowing with gall and wormwood the church, which is the bride of the Lamb, without spot. They have laid profane hands upon her most sacred treasures. Make haste, therefore, O invincible Prince, to help the people of God against the inroads of the lost spirits, and grant us the victory. Amen.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Teresa Bonopartis, our guest today on this Testimony Tuesday. It's been a blessing to be with Teresa throughout this show. If you're just tuning in, just catching this, make sure to go back and listen to this entire episode. So good. She is the author of A Journey to Healing Through Divine Mercy, also co-developer of Entering Canaan, a Sacramental Journey to an Inheritance of Mercy, a post-abortion ministry that she developed with the Sisters of Life. You can find it at enteringcanaan.com. That's enteringcanaan.com. So final segment, Teresa, if you want to share a little bit more what you were talking about before the break, and then just get into Entering Canaan. Who is it for? What's it like? Any way you want to help us to understand it.
I don't know if you could see this. This is the painting. Can you see that?
I can.
And it's the baby at the cross, and so that I just wanted to show that because I had mentioned it. So anyway, like I said, I just became on this quest to let others know that there was healing. And by this time, I was actually working in the Family Life Office at the Diocese in New York, and I actually used to haunt Cardinal O'Connor. He used to actually call me his haunt because I just kept writing the letters and saying things to him about how there needed to be something out there, or we really needed something. And at the same time, one of the women that was in my parish that I was good friends with, she became one of the original Sisters of Life when he had put out that ad asking for people to join the order when he was starting the order. So I was writing him all these letters, and he ended up promising that when the Sisters of Life were formed, that would be one of their missions. And that's pretty much what happened. So once the Sisters of Life were formed, we just started ministering to post-abortive people, and it was Mother Agnes and Sister Lucy Visteel and myself. And it was pretty much based on my experience and what I had gone through in the beginning. And it just slowly grew from there. And again, I was always really comfortable because I always just really felt like it wasn't me, like it was God that was doing this. It really belonged to Mary. And so entering Canaan just started with what we call the Day of Prayer and Healing. And that day is really a day just to give people hope of healing. It's very multifaceted, the ministry. And we always felt like if they came to that day, they would hear a witness. We'd get a little bit into the healing. The Sacrament of Reconciliation was available, and a Mass. And if they left that day with a sense of hope, then that was what we wanted to accomplish for the day. And then I wrote what we call the Hope and Healing Weekend, which is our first weekend retreat. And it really just deals with a lot of specific issues that you deal with regarding abortion. And the retreat is with witnesses, with testimonies, but not necessarily their whole testimony of their healing, but how they dealt with certain things, of women who had been through healing, with different conferences by the priest as well. And we have adoration during the whole weekend. We encourage people to spend time alone with Jesus, but also there's group and different things. So we address different things in that. Just like allowing God to love you, loving yourself as a child of God. So the different things that very many people struggle with during that. And then we have monthly groups for them that, again, deal with specific post-abortion issues. And then once a year, I write what we call the Mercy Retreat, which would be for people that are further along in their healing. And anyone who's been through it is able to come to those. And every year I still write a new one of those. We just had one a couple of weeks ago, actually at the Shrine of Our Lady of Chesterholm in Pennsylvania. So it's also now in about 16 different locations throughout the United States. And so I started this with the Sisters of Life, with the women, with the Days of Prayer and Healing and the Hope and Healing Weekend. But since that time, we've expanded it. In the beginning, we had a couple of men that would come to the retreats with the women. And one of the friars that we knew of, Father Marius Koch, and one of the diocesan priests, we just started feeling like the men were really being open and honest. A lot of times it just seemed like they were afraid to say things because they didn't want to hurt the women more. Or there was just different dynamics going on there that we weren't comfortable with. And so the three of us decided that it was probably a good idea to do something specifically for men. And so it's quite a while. I know it's over 15 years. We began retreats for men who are suffering from abortion, and it really turned out to really be a confirmation, because the men that had been coming with the women, once they were just with other men, it was a completely different story. Because with men, it's so different. Maybe they forced somebody to get an abortion. Maybe the woman got an abortion and they didn't want her to get an abortion. Or maybe they're even married to a woman who's post-abortive and they don't even know about it. And that's really something that, or even if they do know about it, it's affecting their relationships, affecting their intimacy. So there's so many dynamics around it. And so these men are struggling. And so we started the ministry for them too. And it's just been wonderful to see men. They're not as easy to get to come forward as the women, obviously, but many men have come through it over the years. And it's just been so amazing to see the healing and also how they're becoming more vocal. And actually now there's quite a few different men's ministries out there. We started also a day for people who aborted because of an adverse diagnosis, because we found that even with that, if they came to the regular retreat, there was always a way for them to kind of justify it. Well, we wanted our baby, but we got this adverse diagnosis and we were told to abort. And so they were never really focusing in the way that they should, because there was always a reason to kind of like exclude themselves from the fact that they had an abortion just because the reason was different. And the reason is different, but also they needed their own healing and to be able to look at it. And so we started specialized days for couples that did that. And then the last thing that we started, which actually it's 10 years this year, we started retreats for siblings of aborted babies. People don't recognize how abortion really impacts all of us. Every single one of us is impacted by abortion because it's so prevalent in our society. And like I was saying, like with the men, you know, how many men are out there that their wife has had an abortion and they don't even know that she's had an abortion? And maybe, like I said, maybe their intimacy isn't good, or there's different dynamics going on there, and he doesn't even know what it is. He doesn't even realize it's because his wife had an abortion, and so she has issues with these things or troubles with these things, and so their marriage it turns out not to be very good, right? And the same thing with siblings. Like with the siblings, you'll often hear them say, you know, when they find out, well, now my life makes sense. Or I always knew somebody was missing. And I know it was the same with my own children when they found out. And those are really beautiful retreats. We actually have people coming from all over the country, in Canada. As far as I know, we're the only ones that do them. And it's just really beautiful, because it just impacts them in so many different ways, and they feel so isolated and alone. And we just really try to help them to work through that and to realize their own dignity and worth, because a lot of times they feel guilty for being alive. They wonder if their name would be the same. There's just so many different things that come up for them in finding out about a parent's abortion. You know, the people that were supposed to be protecting them, right? And then to find that out is just really earth-shattering. And yet they love their parents, you know?
Of course, yeah. What a blessing to be able to dive into these wounds with people and to help them to receive Jesus into those wounds, right? We're out of time, unfortunately, but just any final encouragement that you have for anybody out there today?
Well, I just, you know, I guess maybe the best encouragement I can give is be not afraid, right? Just make the plunge and come forward for healing. And I promise you, and I always say this, Jesus is not going to disappoint you ever. He's never going to disappoint.
Yeah, and you're with a trusted guide here. Teresa has walked so many through this healing process. So powerful. Again, enteringcanaan.com. Teresa, you are a great gift to the church and the world. Thank you for all your yeses along the way, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Absolutely.
And thank you for what you do, too. It's great.
Sure, yeah. Praise God. All right. So she is the author of A Journey to Healing Through Divine Mercy. Get the book, enteringcanaan.com. God bless you.
Hi, this is Jim Wright, President